Okay. That's good. Hey everyone, welcome to Practical Terrain. Today we're going to be building these pillars using the Proxon and some XPS foam, and we're going to be testing out some homemade pigments using ground up chalk pastels that are really cheap, and we're going to use those to weather these pillars here. Just a side note, I did change my channel name, so if you want more information on that, go check it out in the top corner. It used to be named Paint Every Day, as most of you will know, but I changed it to Practical Terrain. Again, reasons for that are in the video up there. Anyway, we're just going to be testing out how these pigments work on the pillars, seeing how well they do weathering, working on sealing them, and all that good stuff. If you want to see how to make really cheap pigments with many colors, then stay tuned, and we're going to test all that out today. Okay, so let's start off with making the pigments. I just bought a cheap pack of small chalk pastels on Amazon. I'll put a link up in the description if you want to buy the same one I bought, but there are plenty out there. I just stray away from the oil pastels because you can't actually grind those up. Anyway, I just began shaving off the powder from the pastels with my X-Acto knife. This produces the finest pigments, but it takes a lot longer, so later on I'll show you a much faster method. Alright, the second method involves actually crushing up the pigments. I just used a sharp object, a screwdriver in this case, to break the pastel into small chunks, and then used the metal handle of my X-Acto knife to crush it even finer. Also, just rolling it out can make it a lot finer as well. I also would recommend using this on a piece of paper instead of whatever you're working on, because it's a lot easier to put into the pot or container you're using. This method is definitely better than the first one because it's so much faster, and once I ground up all these different colors, I was finally ready to make some pillars as a place to test these pigments on and see how well they actually work. Alright, so we finished getting all these pigments ground up. That went actually really well with the pastels. The first method was kind of slower, but maybe got a finer grain. But by rolling it out with I was just using the handle of my X-Acto blade, that really worked and gave us some nice fine pigment powders that we can use on this project, obviously, and in future projects as well. And I kind of just did a bunch of colors just to test it out. And this right here is not even this is maybe just over half the amount of pigments that came in that $8 little set. So we have plenty of colors for that for very cheap. So that's good. Now to make the pillars. I'm just going to use the Proxon and use some foam. I think I'm going to have some of this green foam it's not XPS foam, I don't think. It's something very close to it. Might be a little bit cheaper. Maybe not quite as dense. I don't think it's not as dense as the normal, pink foam or white or styrodur that you get at your local hardware store. This one is green guard, so I'm not sure what the difference is, but I'm just going to use this because I've tested it before, and it seems to take textures close enough to the pink foam to be usable. So yeah, I think I'm just going to find some shapes that look cool together, knock them out in the Proxon, and just see if I can get these pillars done pretty quickly. So that's that. Time to get cutting. I just started by cutting down these big foam sheets into smaller blocks that I can build off of. I used the Proxon completely for this project. First, I cut the square pieces out, and then I adjusted the wire to 45-degree angles and cut some interesting shapes with that. After all that cutting, I made a huge mess, so I made sure to clean up the workspace before I moved on. Okay, so I have all the pieces of the pillars cut out on the Proxon. It went pretty smoothly, and originally I was only thinking about doing just these little base pieces with the angles, and these pieces then like the caps or the toppers, but I was kind of playing around with these with some spare pieces while I already had that like about 45-degree angle set on the Proxon, and these actually came out looking pretty cool, and I wasn't really liking the look of just that sort of thing, so I decided to add these in to the mix too, and these should add some more detail, so those will be good. Now it's just a question of figuring out what order to put these pillars in. So I definitely want this as the base because this is going to be nice and sturdy. So I could go like this. Like that. Might be decent. But that's a bit tall and a bit kind of out of the ordinary for something I'm going for right now. So I don't know, it looks pretty cool, but go ahead and comment down below what you think the best orientation for these is. So that one looks okay. Let's try going like that. Okay, that actually looks pretty cool. That looks more pillar-ish, in my opinion. So that's definitely a good contender. Could also go a little like inset, like that, and just not even use. I guess I could use that piece. That looks sort of interesting, but yeah, I think this is definitely the best bet right here. Just this with, because I think that really captures the pillar sort of vibe. Because this looks sort of cool, but it looks more like a candle, honestly, than a actual pillar. I guess if you had like a whole line of them, maybe in like a dwarven setting, it would look more like a pillar, but I think I'm going to go with, just this one right here. So, yeah, I think that's good. So I'm just going to start carving in bricks. I want to do a lot of bricks. I might even do bricks on these diagonal surfaces. I don't know how that would work, but I might do that because I want, these are primarily to test for the pigments. Obviously they can be used for terrain, but these are primarily to test for the pigments, and the more cracks and crevices that the pigments can flow into, the better. And I think that's going to be much better for an actual test piece. So I think I'm going to do more bricks than not on these pieces, but we'll see. So just got to get the texturing and carving, and we'll go from there. I kept it pretty simple with the texturing. I did some slightly uniform brickwork on the straight sections and just put some tinfoil ball rock texture on the angled ones. I also put a rim of bricks around the base, and I really tried to emphasize the texture on this piece because I was crafting it with using pigments in mind as a test. To attach these different pieces of pillars together, I decided to use toothpicks to give some extra structural support to the terrain, but this wasn't very necessary though because it makes it a lot harder to put them together, and I wouldn't recommend it unless your terrain is going to get a ton of heavy use. I just use hot glue to glue all the pieces together. After that, I used the simple black Mod Podge base coat to add some strength. Like the entire build, I also kept the paint job fairly simple. Black base coat, dark gray overbrush, light gray dry brush, black wash, and then another dry brush. Like I said, the real focus of these pieces will be the pigments. Okay, so now is the moment of truth. We're finally got to actually testing out the pigments that we made earlier. So I have my 6 most natural colors here, and I think I'm going to go with this kind of medium brown pigment, if I can get it open. And that should be a nice natural dirt color. So I'm just going to do it on one of these pillars, and we'll see how it looks. And then if it looks good, we can do it on the other one. So here it goes. I'm using kind of a soft bristled brush here. I think it'll just pick up the pigments better. I don't know. I'm going to have to figure it out in experimentation. This is my first time I've done this, so it'll be interesting to see. So let's try that out. Okay, that's good. That is, I mean, I've seen these used in videos, but that looks so good. Wow, just that simple little amount of pigment, just, oh my gosh, that made it look a lot more realistic. The fact that it's so matte and it flows right into those cracks just makes it look so perfect. I mean, the best way to simulate dirt is to basically rub dirt on the piece. This is not rugged, but basically simulating dirt, and it looks like dirt. It's a little bit intense, but you can kind of brush it off the top surfaces, kind of like you would like an oil wash. Alright, now I'm going to try it on the bottom, sort of a less textured part of it. Yeah, it's basically like a wash, just flows right into those cracks really nicely. Oh man, I could get used to this. That is super nice. That is awesome. Wow. Alright, so I'm just gonna put pigments on this entire thing, and we'll see how it looks after that. After the success of the first round of pigment, I just covered the pillars completely. I used a darker pigment for the deepest cracks, and that seemed to blend decently with the other color. The color was a little too intense at first, and I tried to brush off some of it with the dry brush with no pigment on it, but the varnish really helped tone it down. Speaking of varnish, I just took the pillars outside to do just that. I think Artist Fixative can help keep the pigments in place as well, but I just used the varnish to protect the foam. Just make sure to put it on lighter than I did. Alright guys, so these are finally done. I just went outside and put on the varnish, and it's completely dry now. It's definitely toughened up these pieces, I think, and it's definitely dulled down the intensity of the pigments, so they're not as glaringly obvious as they were before, which actually I think is a good thing on these. I definitely did put a little bit too much pigment on, but it looks really good now. It's just in the cracks and just some slight coloring on the stones. So overall, I think these pillars turned out great, and definitely gonna use the Proxon again for making things like this. They're really easy to make, and I think the pigments really made them look awesome. And then I thought these simple, cheap pastels that we bought on Amazon, I think these work great for pigments, and I'll put a link down in the description for if you want to buy your own. But I think these work awesome for pigments. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully this will make you want to buy some of your own pigments or pastels, whatever you want, and start using them in terrain crafts. And to answer the question, I wouldn't say these are essential, but I say these are one of the best tools out there right now for stepping up your terrain and your painting, whatever you want, your basing. I think these are one of the best tools out there for super easy weathering and just making it look so much more realistic. So they aren't essential, but I'd say these are just so helpful, and I would definitely recommend buying them. They're like as easy as putting on a wash, and they just add so much realism and depth, and yeah, they're just so easy and so good. Alright, so that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Go ahead and comment down what you thought of the project and these pigments, and I'll see you guys next time.